Our last game for episode 35 is Vendetta. It was nominated by @KeikoMars on Twitter. Vendetta was developed and published by Konami for the arcade. Its earliest release date and territory, as far as we know, is July 1991. Question marks, because nobody knows what territory that was. So that date comes with a significant grain of salt. But what can we say about Vendetta to round up this trio of beat-em-up goodness?
I want to say, for a game made in 1991, Vendetta might be one of the most 80s games I can think of. It is like pure, undistilled 80s.
It's almost like a post-apocalyptic game. It's so close to being post-apocalyptic in terms of like
Also,
the streets of New York, except it's actually Dead End City, are awash with crime. Only a bunch of criminals can save the world from criminals.
Criminals who look like White Mr. T, Hulk Hogan, Billy D. Williams, and Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Yep.
How can you go wrong?
Yeah, they're all color coordinated in the shirts too. You know, well, I'm wearing a red shirt. You guys can't wear red shirts. You have to wear other colored shirts.
I do want to say though, White Mr. T, like, why couldn't they just have made him black?
Well, he doesn't look.
They already had
he doesn't
a
look
black
like
guy,
white
and
either. He just doesn't. Sledge, as he's known as. He looks lighter than Blood, but darker than Hawk and Boomer. So
I want to sound like members of like the Bushwhackers or something. Like what? Like
it makes me slightly uncomfortable that the black guy is called Blood and he's like a gang member. That seems really like maybe you guys shouldn't have done that. Like that seems kind of a bit too too real.
We were talking
if only that was like the worst thing they did in this game. If only.
If only, yeah. Well, should we just get down into like the slaw of despair here?
Well, can we talk about the punching first? How does this game kind of play? Because it's a little different to Streets of Rage. It doesn't have a jump button, I believe.
It's a Konami beat 'em up. Doesn't really play like most Konami beat 'ems. We're just jumping through the air all the time. There's just hordes of enemies on screen all the time. It's a little slower and a little more grounded, I guess the word I'd use is. You don't really have any fancy special moves. You're just punching and kicking dudes and sometimes hitting them with bats.
You can launch a jump attack if you hit punch and kick at the same time while moving, but no, it feels a little bit weightier, not only compared to other Konami beat-em-ups, but like something about it feels almost a little bit more realistic compared to any other given beat-em-up. Like the hits kind of mean more, and you don't take a lot of punishment in this game. Like, I don't know, potentially 3 hits can end you depending on what you get hit by. So, it's not very forgiving. I mean, it is an arcade beat-em-up that never made it to consoles, but
it's a very, very pure give us your money game. There's not much. There's no other way to put that. The game is just so like you put in your money, and then if at the moment you get low on credits, it just starts flashing above your head like, you don't have any money in there. You don't have any money. And it's like, oh, geez, this game really wants to take your money. It doesn't even pretend to play fair most of the time. Like, you'll get hit in the back. Enemies will just bum rush you. It's very hard to position yourself.
You have 20 seconds to get mom and dad over here to shell out.
One thing I love about this game is that when you start the first level, it tells you to get into the city proper, you need to destroy Buzzsaw Bravado. Not fight, not defeat, destroy Buzzsaw Bravado.
Yeah, this game is raw. There's absolutely no dicing around. You probably, like, kill everybody for all you know in this game, and it
kind of implies that you do kill everybody, because when you beat them, they practically look like they're dying, because you get like a close-up of their mangled face as they're like, they're at the refinery, ugh. And then,
the
like,
priest is
dying.
like reading him their last rites and all that. And,
and then when you beat the game, there's a final boss rush where it's mysteriously they were all resurrected, which sounds like they were dead and came back to life.
Exactly. Yes. Another gang with weird powers over life and death.
The old Final Fantasy IV Presto Changeo last second revival. But,
Have you guys ever thought about that? Like, to me, this is something that no RPG, to my knowledge, has ever explored, is what happens in a world where you can pay $100 and raise the dead. Like, what? It's just lawlessness. It's chaos.
But, so this game It's got some interesting stuff that I don't know how common was things. Like, when someone's on the ground, you can pummel them, which is really fun.
Yeah,
I really like that.
That's probably its like most impressive feature, and depending what character you are, they have a different move they have for getting them while they're down. I know that Hawk Hogan does an outright elbow drop on them, for example.
I played through Blood when I was playing when I played through the game, and he just has this gleeful, like, full teeth, like, grin, and he's just like punch, 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 punch. Like, it's really distressing how much he wants to punch.
This
these
game
people.
is a lot more realistic about how it presents a bunch of people going in to beat the shit out of literally everyone. Most brawlers. I love that.
It gets pretty close to actual curb stomping, is what I would say.
I actually like the edge of grittiness in this game, and really how every location just feels as bleak as it does. Like, I buy a lot more that this is a post-apocalyptic setting than Double Dragon, which always claimed it was post-apoc, but I never really got that sense out of Double Dragon somehow. I don't know why. But no, Vendetta really brings in the bleakness.
This one also, traditionally for a beat 'em up, the final boss usually lives in a mansion or some sort of fancy tower or hotel. They live in somewhere that's really nice and like a good place to be.
Yeah, no, where you fight Faust, the final boss, is a real shithole. It's just this, like, darkened, wrecked room, just loaded with spray paint everywhere, and it's just so dire all around, but it gives it a really unique feel. Like, I don't know any other beat-em-up
like a Death Wish. I was just gonna say, it reminds me of like this like late 80s or mid 80s like war on crime type things, like what was it, one of the Death Wish sequels, the Canon Films ones.
Three was the one with Marina Sirtis.
There is one thing I feel like you guys are forgetting. This game actually, on the other hand, sometimes has a really weird sense of humor. Like, if you kick people, sometimes you'll just kick them in the nads with a ding, God hand style. Like, you do actually hit them. They grab their crotch and everything.
I think they do throw up if you hit them in certain ways in this game, too, sometimes.
Also,
I've seen the enemies, like, double over and vomit because they're being beaten so much.
Also, there are dogs. Sometimes they will... I think they're actively humping your character, which hurts you.
They definitely bite you. I don't know if they changed the humping for...
And speaking of humping, there's certain
regional differences.
Yeah, there's a certain element in the Japanese version we should probably briefly discuss.
We must. Yeah.
Someone else can handle it.
Japanese.
No, you know all about it.
Okay, if you guys insist. The Japanese version, Crime Fighters 2, has an enemy type that is a half-naked gay leather daddy, and their attack is to grab you from behind, rapidly hump your character, and just start licking them. Yeah. And that does a lot of damage.
They were taken out of international releases for very apparent PC.
Really? Why would they have done that? You know, the funny thing is, I mean, not funny, actually, really depressing thing is it was probably more just like an objection to having such a character in the thing rather than the like dehumanization of gay people. Like, that wasn't really what they were concerned about back then. It's like, well, you can do what you want, but don't like the act itself was offensive, I guess.
For better or worse, that kind of humor does help us stand out a bit more from, say, Final Fight.
Well, I think that the humor in that kind of humor probably didn't suit the game. As we're saying, the atmosphere feels pretty consistent and pretty, not entirely grim, but pretty harsh. So to have such a weird slapstick, like gay, derogatory like character in there, it's like, huh? Where'd this come from? Like, why is that there in this universe when everyone else is kind of po-faced, beating each other up to survive kind of deal? It's like, what?
Yeah, well, if I may thankfully change the subject and go back to something that Bob brought up, he said this is Crime Fighters 2, which makes it the sequel to an earlier Konami beat-em-up by the name of Crime Fighters, which was boring. That game is not very good.
It is really, really awful. Don't ever play it. Just play Vendetta instead.
Well, to Crime Fighters' credit, I believe it might have beaten out Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as, like, one of the very first beat-em-ups to have a 4-player support, but yeah, you don't want to play it. Vendetta also does offer 4 players, and that's probably the way it's best played if you can manage to get people together, although I believe Vendetta machines are not as common as TMNT machines and whatever passes for
I have
arcades.
never seen one in the wild.
I used to actually see the game when I was a kid. My mall arcade in the 90s actually had this machine, and that image of the boss Faust all in red looming over the city, that scared the shit out of me as a kid, to be honest. It scared me so much I never actually
I believe that's
played
very similar to the Streets of Rage one, isn't it? I think the
Mr.
Streets of Rage intro has the villain hovering over the city.
How many games did that? How many games did that where they show like on the attract screen like Strider did it, right? They had like the giant looming
very, very
bad guy inexplicably hovering over an entire city, like holding it in his evil clutches. Yeah.
That just makes me think of the cover to Bionic Commando, at least the Japanese version.
Oh yeah. So I mean, I guess before we rank this, the one thing I want to say about Vendetta is that on a certain level, the appeal of beat 'em ups is just sheer brutality. And although Vendetta isn't the greatest beat 'em up, it does deliver on the brutality, like man's inhumanity to man front. So
I appreciate that this is a beat 'em up that doesn't shy away from the fact that you are basically pummeling the shit out of people. Like, that is the genre, and this game's you're beating the shit out of people. That's what you're doing.
Beat people up until they puke. Beat people up until they die. Beat people up until they beg for mercy, and then kill them. I mean, it's just, it's not quite. It doesn't really match like the Golden Axe level of like bashing somebody's skull in with like the butt of your sword, like pommel. But it gets pretty close, and it feels
than Golden Axe, because even though Golden Axe is, it's got screaming and axes and a guy gets his head cut off in the arcade game, it doesn't have that same. It still has an element of fun, lightheartedness to it, which is kind of weird compared to Vendetta.
This one you get the impression like you wonder like whether the people who made it they thought America was like this.
Yeah, they must have watched the American movies that were, painting New York as this massive crime field that was just people getting murdered 24/7, constantly.
Yeah, to be fair, there were quite a few like horror films set in New York, like Abel Ferraro's Driller Killer, Video Nasty, which took place at the height of New York's actual being a gritty shithole to live in before it was all cleaned up and whatnot. So, I don't know if this game's supposed to be a caricature of any nationality, but, whatever it is, it's just so grim and gritty that it really stands out a lot from its contemporaries.
But
it has some levity to it.
To talk about ranking real quick, I don't think it's as good as Ninja Baseball Batman. It doesn't have quite the same amount of variety and the same amount of crazy new things going on. I'd probably put it closer to Golden Axe.
I would put it way below Golden Axe.
Really, my problem with this game is that it is such a quintessential credit feeder. It is so desperate to get your money.
Even more so than like Final Fight and
I will
every
say,
other
though,
beat 'em up.
To this game's credit, it is also relatively short, even if it does drain your cash. Like, it's only got 5 levels of 6 counting the big boss rush at the end, but it doesn't overstay its welcome. I think it's shorter than
it does have 4-player support, which I appreciate.
And the 4-player.
How much variation is there between levels? Because that's another important thing for beat 'em ups to do, is to change the environs and remain kind of fresh to look at.
I mean, I think the most exciting thing you see is like a city street where you meet the Leather Daddies.
I believe the weather changes in the first level from clear skies to lightning and cloud, which is pretty neat.
I think the levels felt different enough.
It's more that there's not a huge change between you've got different bosses each level, but the actual enemies you fight don't feel particularly different for the most part, except when the dogs show up, and I don't really like fighting dogs in games as a general rule. So
really, I love it.
This isn't, this doesn't shy away. You beat the dogs to death. Like, that is a component of the game.
It's you or them, dude. It's you.
Yeah, I know, they're attacking you, and they're evil dogs, and you gotta kill them, apparently, because they
are evil.
So they've been trained to be evil. But,
Cruelty 101.
There is no mix-up in this game. You play the same it's a typical beat 'em up in that every level pretty much plays out the same way. You punch people until you get to the end. You fight a boss who are all different, and there's some nice bosses. The twins who have two separate guys who have the same life bar. That's nice, cool little.
That is weird.
One thing
yeah.
about this game I do want to complain about real quick. This is a typical Konami-style game where all the characters are basically identical except their animations.
Yeah, that's very true. Like, it's to the extent that you can't pick your character. It's whichever control you're sitting at, that is the character you will get. So,
Well,
that definitely loses at points in my eyes, that even though they did animate them differently, they are effectively the same character, which reduces the
Right.
replayability substantially.
I'm thinking like right below Commander Keen Episode 1, right above Knights of Crystallion.
I had
Yeah.
been looking at around Road Rash myself, but
I'm okay with
really
that.
I can see that. I can see that. I mean, it kind of feels weird putting it below. Well, no, it's got to go below eSWAT in a way, but then like below Technocop and Revolution X. I mean,
that's not
those
my
are games.
fault you guys
I
put
don't think it
Technocop that
should-
high.
Actually, I don't think it should go below Revolution X. That's a bit mean.
Well, I mean, it's not like, remember, Revolution X is a game that basically is where it is on stylistic points alone. It has nothing to do with the gameplay. It's just so
Well, you do-
crazy, weird.
They're actually quite similar games in that it's mostly you just feed money into it and then you quit when you've done.
Don't give up!
Yeah.
Can we place it actually above Commander Keen, just above below Clash of Demon Head? Because
I really don't know if I'd like this above Commander Keen. I think Commander Keen brings a lot more to the table.
but I'm a lot
Then-
worse at Commander Keen than
Okay,
I am at Vendetta.
How about somewhere between Knights of Crystallion and Revolution X?
I mean, I can handle somewhere around there.
You're like above Octopus?
Actually, I'm going to go with the original suggestion of between Keen and Crystallion. I can at least understand this game easier than Crystallion, so... Although that's kind of an unfair comparison.
Who's going to be the tiebreaker here?
I have no idea.
I will let it go below Keen. I'm okay with that.
All
I
right.
would push it. Damn it! I would put it below Knights of Crystallion. What a great game!
Okay,
Ooh.
Knights of Crystallion. Is that fair?
Okay, below. All right. I'll allow it to go below Knights of Crystallion, above Uniracers.
Yes.
Just because of the, like I said, the point of beat 'em ups is to just exhibit brutality against your fellow man, and just throw mercy out the window and just kick people in the balls.
Well, I guess Crystallion exhibits brutality on basic goddamn comprehensions.
Yeah,
That's
not
what's
against the
higher.
player, although this game does that as well. All right,
Hey,
excellent.
yeah.